and welcome to the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. We're back again this week, and today we're going to take a look at Murder at the Oasis. Now, as always, before we jump into the episode itself, we're going to take a look at the cast of characters. And we've got a bit of a smaller cast of characters than some other episodes. There's definitely a few characters in here, but that are like minor roles that I'm not going to discuss. We've got about, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, about 8 characters beyond Jessica Fletcher that are pretty big. So let's jump right into it with our murder victim. Johnny Sullivan. No, Johnny Shannon, played by Ed Ames. Now, Ed Ames is a character, is an actor that I've seen in a couple of things, I think. Let's see. He is most known for... Oh, that's probably, let me just see here. Ed Ames, Ed Ames, Vic Ames, Gene Ames, and Joe Ames, the sons of Ukrainian Jewish parents and 4 of 9 children. Okay. Vic Ames might be an actor that I know, too. Oh. Ooh. No, he's not an actor I've known. He was in, like, one thing. One thing. Basically. Okay. But Ed Ames is known for being Mingo / Tara Mingo from the Daniel Boone television series in 64 to 68 and Daniel Boone Frontier Trail Rider in 1966. He was also the narrator in Treasure House, the Utah mining story, and he was a guest, like himself, on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson for, I think, quite a few years. His last acting credit was in 1995, where he played Vasily Peshkov in The Marshal television series. What's The Marshal? That sounds vaguely familiar. The Marshal. Jeff Fahey was the Marshal. McBride is a U.S. Marshal, and his job is to guard criminals, protect witnesses, and pursue escaped convicts. Okay. Interesting. I may have seen that on television way back in the day, because that came out in, when was it? 95? Yeah, that's probably around the time I was watching TV. He was also in Jake and the Fat Man for an episode. He was in the Heat of the Night for an episode. And he was in the one episode of Murder, She Wrote. This one. Beyond that, not too much else he's been in. Mike Hammer television series. He was in one of them. Like I said, he was in the Daniel Boone movie and the TV series. But yeah, 72 episodes as Mingo / Tara Mingo. Yeah, the first one of the early ones. Ooh, that's a lot of episodes. And yeah, that was... He was playing an Indian, I believe, named Mingo, because the picture they have up here is of him dressed up like an Indian with the feathered headdress and... Oh, boy. Mind you, this was back in 1964 through 68 that this television series was out. Still. Oh. That's kind of bad. That's kind of bad. But he's our murder victim in this one. He was also apparently in... Where is it? I saw a thing. Where was it? Where was it? No. Okay. Greatest History? Perhaps? No, that's it. Greatest Heroes of the Bible television series. He was in 2 episodes of that as Lot. Abraham's Sacrifice and Sodom and Gomorrah. So he played Lot in a Christian show. But only 19 acting credits to his name. Huh. Trivia. One of Ed Ames's most memorable moments in television was when he threw his famous tomahawk on The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson. He threw the tomahawk, and it landed right between the target's legs, thus prompting, "I didn't even know you were Jewish." This event prompted one of the longest laughs in television history. Huh. That is kind of interesting. I did not know that. But yeah. Who else? We also have the character of Buster Bailey, played by Joey Bishop. Joey Bishop is most known for The Joey Bishop Show, where he plays himself, 1967 to 69. He was himself as a guest on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. The Jack Parr Tonight Show, he was a guest. And The Joey Bishop Show, I guess there was 2. Oh yeah, 61 to 65. And then 67 to 69. I guess it was canceled and brought back. He definitely, given the way he acts in this show, I definitely get the idea that he's a comedian. That he was a comedian. So it's kind of cool. His last acting credit was in 96. Mad Dog Time. Mr. Gottlieb. What is Mad Dog Time? Huh. Interesting. Mob thing. Murder, She Wrote. He was only in this episode of Murder, She Wrote. He didn't come back. Okay. The Joey Barnes Show, where he plays himself. Joey Barnes Jr., Light-Fingered Louie. Yeah. Pretty sure it's a skit comedy show. There was a bunch of those back in the day. Only 27 acting credits to his name. He was big back in the probably the late 50s, 60s, and 70s. Maybe 70s. Because he went from an acting credit in 1967, and then the next one was 1976. So yeah, late 50s and 60s he is when he was most big in, I guess. What else has he been in? Oh, interesting. He was in the original Ocean's 11 movie as Mushy O'Connors. I haven't seen that. One of these days I get to track that down. What else has he been in? The Dick Powell Theater, Johnny Cool, Texas Across the River. He played Kronk. He was a guard in Get Smart, the TV series, uncredited. I remember Get Smart. Would you believe I watched that show as a kid? Yeah. Perpetually glum stand-up comedian Joey Bishop. Okay, there it is. Very cool. He plays Buster Bailey, though. A very close friend of Johnny Shannon. We have Mickey Shannon, Johnny Shannon's son, played by Joseph Bottoms. Yes, that's an actual name. Joseph Bottoms. He is most known for playing Robin Lee Graham in The Dove, playing Rudy Weiss in Holocaust, 1978. I never heard of that. Lieutenant Charles Pizer in The Black Hole. Huh. I have that movie. Interesting. And Sean Trelawney in the television series The Net, 1998 to 1999, I believe based off of the Sandra Bullock movie The Net, which I remember watching and thinking back on it now, oh god, that movie was bad. Okay, the last acting credit, he's only got 52, was 2014, so only 3 years ago. A short called Monster in a House. He played Joe. 19 episodes of The Net TV series. He was in. Played Tom Wilson in a two-part episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. Peter Garland in 5 episodes of Street Legal. Street Legal sounds familiar. He played Kirk Cranston in 139 episodes of Santa Barbara. So he was around it for a while there. Mickey Shannon in Murder, She Wrote, the only episode he's been in of that. The Sins of Dorian Gray TV movie, Stuart Vane. Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, he played Major Effects. I don't know that particular episode. TV miniseries was Holocaust. I thought it was a movie. Rudy Weiss. Interesting. Very interesting. I've never heard of this movie. 1997, he played Therapist Himmler in Snide and Prejudice. Is that a parody? What? Okay. Huh. Snide and Prejudice. Dr. Cohen works in a mental institution where all patients believe they're historical members of the German Nazi Party, including Hitler. They are allowed to live out their delusions, so Hitler, in quotation marks, tries to consolidate his power. Wow. Okay. He plays Therapist Himmler. Wow. Who plays Hitler, though? Angus McFadden. Angus McFadden? What has he been in that I know of? I'm getting off track here. I know I am. I'm totally... Oh! He played Nicholas Quinn in 4 episodes of Chuck, the TV series. That's the guy that plays Hitler in Snide and Prejudice. That's just frickin' weird. Absolutely freaking weird. Okay. Wow. Yeah, he's been in a couple things. We also have Peggy Shannon, Johnny Shannon's wife, estranged, played by Piper Laurie, who I remember from reading the back or the summary in my DVD case for Murder, She Wrote, that Piper Laurie was in Twin Peaks. But let's see. She's most known for Margaret White in Carrie, 1976, to Stephen King. Sarah Packard in the 1961 movie The Hustler. Mrs. Karen Olsen in the 1998 movie The Faculty. The Faculty? I think I've seen that one. Years ago. But I think I've seen that one. The Faculty. Students suspect their teachers are aliens after bizarre occurrences. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I watched that movie. It sounds like the sort of thing I would. And she played Grandma in the 2010 movie Hesher. I think that's got Hesher. Yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Hesher. Okay. That's cool. What else has she been in that some people might know? Her most recent one was 2018. It's in post-production. She's playing Grandma Verna Wersch in White Boy Rick. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Dead Like Me TV series, Nina Romney. She played an episode, 2004. Law and Order Special Victims Unit, in 2001. She was in an episode. She played Mrs. Mulhern and Marianne in 2 different episodes of Frasier. There's The Faculty. Traps TV series. Cora Trapcheck. I don't know that Traps TV series. That looks interesting. There's only 5 episodes of it. I think it's BBC. It's a BBC series, I think. Maybe. Traps. Very interesting. Right, Wrestling Ernest Hemingway. Yeah, Twin Peaks. She was Catherine Martell in the original Twin Peaks. Oh wait, no, she was more than that. Okay. That's a little weird. Piper Laurie, Twin Peaks. Catherine Martell. But she was also Mr. Tojimura. Well, it is a weird show from what I've heard. She isn't in the new one, so I don't know. Oh, the Beauty and the Beast TV series. She was Mrs. David. That's the one with Ron Perlman, I believe. Yep. That's the one with Ron Perlman as the Beast. I remember that used to be on. My mother used to watch that quite a bit. Skag. She played Joe Skagska. Skagska? Wow. General Electric Theater. Interesting. And quite a few things. She's got quite a few acting credits to her name. 113 over the years. Not bad. Not bad, Piper Laurie. She did good in this one. I quite liked her character in this one. Who else we got? We also have Terry Shannon, the daughter of Johnny Shannon, and Peggy Shannon, of course, played by Linda Pearl. Linda Pearl's last acting credit was in 2017. Yeah. She's actually in the new Kiefer Sutherland television series Designated Survivor as Julia Rombauer. So if any of you are interested in that, she is most known for Dr. Ruth Young in Mighty Joe Young, Charlene Matlock in the Matlock television series, which I used to watch quite a lot as a kid. Sheila Monroe in Visiting Hours. So frightening you'll never recover. Scary. And Brett Robin in Robin's Hoods. That sounds like, I'm going to say, a teacher teaching a bunch of young disenfranchised students who are her hoods. Maybe. She plays Barbara Fortnum in Reckless TV series 2014. She plays Helen Beasley in The Office television series. Elizabeth Gaines in a few episodes of Homeland. Barbara Pelt in a couple episodes of True Blood. Sarah Novelli in 12 episodes of First Monday. Claire Wright in Port Charles TV series back in 2000. She's been in a few things. Did I just see The Last Airbender? Oh no. I did not. Sorry. She's been in more than one episode of Murder, She Wrote as well. She was in this one. She played a different character in an episode in 1988, and then another different character in an episode in 1993. So that's kind of interesting. I always like it when actors come back. It surprises me, even though I know the reason why. It was mentioned both Graham and Kathleen Stark in their Magnum PI rewatch that they do. They mentioned that back then, when these shows were airing, there was no easy access to a database to, like the Internet Movie Database, which I'm looking on, to be able to be like, yeah, that actor or actress was in this show in this year. So the only way you remember them is if you were to recognize them. And because all this media was only out there when it aired or in syndication, you'd have to watch it when it was aired and remember the ones you've seen before. So it's definitely it's interesting to see them coming back and playing completely different characters. 23 episodes of Matlock she was in. She played Ashley Pfister and Gloria in a bunch of episodes in Happy Days with Mr. Cunningham. Tom Bosley, who you may remember is the sheriff at Cabot Cove. Sheriff Tupper. Good old Amos Tupper. What else? There's a bunch of other stuff she's been in. She has like 101 acting credits. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Designated Survivor. Nice. Very nice. So that's the Shannon family. And Buster Bailey is a friend of the family. There's another friend of the family, Lou Ross, played by Jack O'Halloran. Now, Jack O'Halloran, some people might they might recognize him from some things. He's only got 29 acting credits to his name over the years. But he was a heavyweight boxing contender in the 60s and 70s. 6'6", Irish Jack O'Halloran. He remained undefeated in his first 16 professional matches. Went on to defeat. He went on to defeat. Where is it? Former title contenders Cleveland Williams, Terry Daniels, Manuel Ramos, and Danny McAllendon. 1972, he won the California State Heavyweight Championship with a victory over Henry Clark. Scoring an upset victory over 8th-ranked Al Blue Lewis, 73, O'Halloran was on the verge of a bout with Muhammad Ali when he was shockingly knocked out by Jimmy Somerville in Miami Beach, Florida. Even though he knocked out Somerville in the rematch, O'Halloran was never in contention again. He retired in 1974 because of a tumor in the pituitary gland with a record of 34-21-2 with 17 knockout victories. He lost to future heavyweight champions George Foreman and Ken Norton. Achieved a world ranking for several years. Huh. Very interesting. But yeah, you may recognize him from a couple of movies. Because he's most known for playing Non in both Superman and Superman 2. He played Emil Muzz in Dragnet with Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks, and Moose Malloy in Farewell My Lovely. His last acting credit was, I think that's a video game. Let me check. Action, adventure, fantasy. Oh no. No, it's not. It's actually, that is actually a movie. Dark Ascension 2, The Journey to Hell. He plays Guardian Simon. It's in pre-production right now. He's also got 3 other things he's in pre-production. Dark Ascension, the first one, 2017 pre-production. Huh. So there's supposed to be Dark Ascension. It's supposed to be coming out this year, I guess. It might be being delayed. A Study in Red trilogy, TV miniseries, The Ripper, and Senator Morlock in Liberty is also in pre-production for next year. So his last actual acting credit is Abduct. 2016, he played Alistair. He played Yeti in The Flintstones. That is the, yep, that's the one with John Goodman and Rick Moranis and Rosie O'Donnell. So Yeti in the Flintstones movie, that's who he played. He also played Lou Ross in this episode of Murder, She Wrote. He played Raleigh in an episode of Knight Rider. As I said, he played Non in those 2 Superman movies. Farewell, My Lovely was his first acting credit. Moose Malloy. I think that's a noir movie. Los Angeles private eye Philip Marlowe is hired by paroled convict Moose Malloy to find his girlfriend Velma, former seedy nightclub dancer. Huh. I may have to track that down just to watch it. It looks kind of interesting. I do like the noir esque type shows. So yeah, that's what he's been in. Who else do we have? Well, we also have Joseph Cali. He plays Vic LaRosa, a very arrogant tennis player. He is most known for playing Joey in Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta. Robert Bobby Mancusi in Port Charles. Vincent DaCosta in The Lonely Lady. And Jerry DeSalvo in The Competition. Apparently he also played Joey in the Saturday Night Fever video game in 2008, which is his last acting credit. I was unaware there was a Saturday Night Fever video game. What the hell, man? What the hell? What is it, a dancing game? He played Ray Natali in an episode of 18 Wheels of Justice. 18 Wheels of Justice? Oh God, that hurts. It's so bad. Ooh. Yeah. Nick the Nose. He played Nick the Nose in the Suicide Kings movie, which I covered in Big and Small Screens. Wonderful movie with Christopher Walken and a couple other people. Because let's face it, Christopher Walken's in the movie. Who else are you going to talk about? He played in 3 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. This one in 1985. He played a priest in a 1990 episode. 1990. The Sicilian Encounter. And Paul Grimaldi in a 94 episode called Crimson Harvest. Interesting. Santa Barbara as Jack Dante. Ooh, he was in an episode of Freddy's Nightmares. Memory Overload. He played Joe. Played Roger in 6 episodes of Something Is Out There. Nick Frazier in 17 episodes of Today's FBI. The hell is this? Flatbrush? The comic misadventures of a Brooklyn gang called the Fungos is Flatbrush, and he plays Prestopopoulos. Right. Okay, then. That's... I don't know what to say about that. That's extremely weird. Okay. And, last but not leastly, we have the police detective in this episode. Detective Sergeant Barnes, played by Ken Howard. Ooh, interesting. He was elected the national president of the Screen Actors Guild on September 24th, 2009. So he's the president of the Screen Actors Guild. Good old SAG. That's pretty cool. He is most known for playing Ken Reeves in The White Shadow. I believe that's a sports series because it looks like a basketball team standing beside the manager in a locker room on that picture. He played Judge Warren in 2014's movie The Judge, which I think is the one that has, Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall. I remember seeing the trailers for that. He played Bergstrom in the 1995 Sandra Bullock movie The Net, which we've already talked about. And Don Jeffries in Michael Clayton. That's a George Clooney movie. A law firm brings its fixer to remedy the situation after a lawyer has a breakdown while representing a chemical company that he knows is guilty in a multi-billion-dollar class action suit. The truth can be adjusted. Dun dun dun. So that's cool. What else has he been in? His last acting credit was in 2015. He played Mop Executive in the movie called Joy. As I said, he was in The Judge. He plays Hank Hooper in 9 episodes of 30 Rock, if any of you enjoy that show. He also plays quite a lot of television series he's got going here. Did I watch that one? It doesn't sound like it. But he played Evan Connellow in an episode of Dirty Sexy Money. I was just like, that sounds familiar. Joe Samuels in 10 episodes of Kane, the TV series. Law and Order. Walt Callahan in a couple episodes of Huff. He played Judge Walter Merrick in an episode of The Ghost Whisperer. Max Kavanaugh in 49 episodes of Crossing Jordan. And Melrose Place, Mr. George Andrews. He's in a few episodes of that. Oh, wow. He's been in 6 episodes of Murder, She Wrote. He was in this episode in 1985. He was in a 2-parter in 1989. Then he was in another episode in 1989. He was back for yet another episode in 1992. And then one more episode in 1994. He's done some work. He also did a voice in Captain Planet and the Planeteers. A river ran through it. I don't know what voice, it just says voice. He did a voice. He played Harkness in an episode of Batman the Animated Series, See No Evil. He played Garrett Boydston in The Colbys. And he also played Garrett Boydston in Dynasty. I think The Colbys was probably a spin-off series from Dynasty. Yep. Spin-off from Dynasty. Featured the adventures of Jeff and Fallon Colby in California. I said that wrong on purpose. Jack Long in It's Not Easy. Ken Reeves in The White Shadow. As I said, let me see what that one's about. I think it is. A white former NBA professional retires from the program and gets a job as a basketball coach in a predominantly black inner-city high school. The White Shadow. So that's where that name comes in. Hmm. See, I don't want to make snap judgments because I've never heard of this show, nor have I seen any of it. It was made back in the years 1978 to 1981. So I don't know how good it is. I also don't know if it was made, how to put this simply, I don't know if it's racist or not. I mean, having the white former NBA, successful white man, getting a job at predominantly black inner city schools or high school teaching basketball, I don't know if that falls into that whole white savior thing or not. I'm not sure. But if it doesn't, if that's not what they're doing with this, it ran for 3 seasons. Might be something to check out. If any of you know about this, please let me know in the comments. Because I've never heard of this before. It seems kind of interesting. Anyways, that is our cast of characters for this episode of Murder, She Wrote. Murder at the Oasis. So we're going to dive right into the episode now and take a look. Our episode begins with an overview shot as we hear piano music playing of a very affluent neighborhood, a gate, a limo out front of a house. And then we see Johnny Shannon standing playing the piano. And some of the notes are ringing a bit off. He doesn't seem to be... He's like listening to the music and he doesn't seem happy. He's got a very disgruntled look on his face as he's playing. He ends up getting frustrated and he calls for his son, Mickey. He's got a coat draped over his shoulders, but he doesn't have his arms through the sleeves. And he pours himself a drink as his son comes in and starts arguing with him about the music that he was just playing, because he got his son to write it for a tennis thing he's going to be opening. And he tells his son, he's like, I thought I told you to make something upbeat for me. It's like, does this sound upbeat for you? And he plays it. And his son's just like, no, Dad, you're not playing it on the right tempo. He's like, if you play it at the right tempo, it'll sound good. And they have a bit of an argument here. His son is like not trying to get upset and not trying to upset his father, but he's basically saying, maybe you're wrong for once. And his father, Johnny here, basically ends up going, is that it? Maybe I'm wrong? It's like, is that the best you got? It's like, wow. It's like, your sister got all the moxie because you ain't got none of me in you. So he's a very antagonistic fellow. And his son basically goes, just let me play this for you the way it's supposed to be played, then you'll see. And he starts playing it, and it's definitely the same song, much more upbeat. He also calls Buster in, his friend, and Buster immediately hears the music and he says, I like that. That's bouncy. That's upbeat. And of course, Johnny basically is like, what do you know? You got a tin ear. And he's like, go get the car. And he orders his friend out. And his friend Buster is all, yes sir, yes sir. I'll get it right away, sir. Now, there's a bit of a moment here I kind of liked. After his friend leaves, his son's still playing, but Johnny's got his back to him, And he's got this look on his face. It's just like, maybe I was wrong. But he doesn't apologize to his son. He's just like, keep working on it, and he goes and leaves. The next scene it cuts to is the limo driving down the highway. Lou Ross, who I mentioned before, sporting a wonderful mustache that makes him look quite intimidating, is driving. Buster and Johnny are in the back, having a good old laugh as they're talking. The phone in the car rings. Buster answers it and says it's Mr. Valentine. And Johnny doesn't want to talk to him. So he's just like, make something up. He's like, I don't want to talk to him. So Buster says that that Johnny can't come to the phone because he just stepped out. Johnny starts laughing at that while Buster's still got the phone up, and he's like hurrying to hang it up. And they have a bit of an argument there between them two, because he's like you don't mess with Mr. Valentine. His man was on the phone still. He heard you. And Johnny's like, I don't care. I'm protected. He's like, Valentine ain't gonna move on me. Which is, he's got this arrogant bearing to him. The next thing we see is a tennis club, a country club, where there's a big banner, home of the Johnny Shannon Tennis Classic. We see Jessica and Peggy Shannon sitting and having dinner, or breakfast, tea, if you will, waiting for Johnny Shannon to arrive. The waiter even says, Mr. Shannon is never more than a few minutes late. And Jessica and Peggy obviously have known each other for a long time. They went to school together because they talk about being in the dorm, and Jessica had a bit of a traumatic experience there because to this day she's still not able to look at a Brussels sprout. We see a bit of a argument down on the courts as Vic LaRosa tears into one of his older opponents, about his older opponent being blind and whatnot, and he storms off all arrogantly like. Peggy makes mention of the older man down there, and Jessica kind of teases her a bit, kind of asking, is that some attraction that I hear in your voice? We see Johnny arriving and saying hello to everybody in all the tables as he makes his way over. Peggy, of course, makes a remark that he's never more than a few minutes late, but takes 30 minutes to work the room. And he comes over and greets Jessica and Peggy. He's very charming and whatnot. And you get the impression that they've known each other for a little while. And he's very charming to his estranged wife, Peggy. And he has a seat. They talk for a little bit. One of them asks about the daughter. Jessica asks what the daughter's up to. Terry. And, of course, Johnny says, well, ask her yourself. And we see Terry walking across. A very pretty woman in her dress, as she comes over and says hello to Jessica and her mother and her father, though there's some hostility there between her and her father. And instead of sticking around and having dinner with them, she goes over to another table because she's meeting someone else. And her father, of course, is like, not that tennis bum. He's like, I told you not to see him. And of course, it is the tennis bum, Vic LaRosa, who shows up and starts kissing her right there. And they're only like a table away. And of course, Johnny Shannon gets up to go over. Peggy tries to stop him, but Johnny's not having any of it. And kind of makes mention that she said that once before. Because Peggy's like, she's a big girl, she can make her own decisions. And Johnny's like, yeah, you said that once before, and you were wrong then too. Something in the past. So he gets over and gets in Vic LaRosa's face. And Vic, as we saw down on the court, has a bit of a temper. He ain't taking any guff off of Johnny Shannon. They get into a bit of a scuffle. Johnny's bodyguard and Lou and the best friend Buster come over and pull Vic off him. And the detective comes over, Detective Barnes, and basically, introduces himself and asks what's going on. And Johnny basically says that he doesn't want that man near his daughter, and he wants Detective Barnes to take care of that for him. And Detective Barnes, he says that he doesn't work for Johnny, so he doesn't have to take orders from him. And Johnny says he has a good line here, because he says, he's like, you must be new here. Ask around. You'll find out soon enough. And walks off to take his daughter home. Now, Jessica and Peggy, there's a bit of a talk between them. She apologizes, Peggy, about this whole scene, and that they only saw a taste of it, but the daughter and the father really butt heads. The next thing we see is Buster coming downstairs with a glass of milk, knocking on the door to the den, basically delivering his milk to him. But Johnny doesn't answer, so he keeps knocking, trying to open the door. We can see Mikey, or Mickey, I should say. We can see Mickey listening in as Buster's banging on the door, trying to get Johnny's attention. We see Mickey heading down the hall then to talk to Terry and let her know something's happened to their father. But Vic LaRosa is in the room putting his shirt on. Lou gets there, and he's a big man. He breaks the door down. They all come in, and they find Johnny Shannon dead in his chair. Well. Cut to the next morning, and we see Peggy and Jessica driving along the highway, talking to each other. Jessica is, of course, or Peggy is, of course, very grateful to Jessica for going with her to the house. And they have a little bit of discussion about the state of their marriage, and how Peggy was always a little bit jealous of Jessica and her husband, Frank, who has been passed away since the show began. But they made mention of Jessica's passed away husband, Frank, a few times. The next thing we see is at the club, where Terry is there and waiting for somebody else to come out of the men's locker room before she goes in and locks the door behind. And she finds Vic LaRosa and lets Vic know that her father is dead and that he needs to get going because they're going to suspect he had something to do with it. So she gives him a wad of cash and is like, get out of town. And he doesn't want to leave because he's got like a tennis tournament coming up. And he kind of says something along the lines of, he's like, there's this thing that he suspects. He thinks that there's more going on with the relationship than what she does, because she basically kind of calls him naive and says that she never really liked him in the first place. She was only seeing him to get back at her father in the first place, which is cold. Cold as ice. The next thing we see is Mickey at the house as Jessica and Peggy arrive and have a little talk. Mickey is, of course, hoping that Jessica is going to help with the investigation, because Mickey ends up saying something and Jessica asks a question, force of habit for her. But she's not intending to involve herself in the investigation. Now, Detective Barnes comes in and makes mention that because Jessica's like, I'm no detective. My exploits have all been grossly exaggerated. And Detective Barnes is like, that's not what I heard. Mickey and Peggy kind of hope to try and urge Jessica to help, because obviously Detective Barnes needs all the help he can get, according to them. And Detective Barnes has there's a wonderful little exchange between Detective Barnes and Jessica here, because he's basically like I've read your books and they're okay, but you do get some things wrong. And Jessica is immediately like, well, I'm not going to be getting involved. Wait, why do you say my books are wrong? And he's like, well, come on, I'll tell you. The crime scene's this way. So he goes and leads her on, and he starts talking to her about her making the killers the most interesting characters in the book, when most killers that he knows are really rather dull. The policemen involved should be the ones that are more interesting, because, police procedure and so on and so forth as they're going. It's a wonderful little moment. So we head into the den where this all happened. Find out that the door had to be forced from the inside. And the detective asks if Jessica's been in this room before, and she's like, no, this is the first time. And the detective's like, me too. And that, but Jessica is like, this is definitely Johnny's room. You can tell just the way it's all laid out. Like all the photos on the walls, the records and everything. It's very much him in personality. And she makes mention that nobody seems to have heard a gunshot, according to Detective Barnes, even though you can hear the piano being played. So she makes mention of the use of a silencer. Detective Barnes says it's more accurately called a muffler. It's like you can't completely silence the shot. It's like there's always going to be some sound. But that could have been overtaken by the sounds of a television or something else. But when they came in, the television wasn't on. So, hard to say. Hard to say what's going on. But there doesn't seem to be anything missing. To the point that there is even a wall safe filled with money and stocks and bonds. None of it was taken. Nothing seems to be missing, because Detective Barnes has had one of the family open it for him and verify that nothing seems to be missing from it. The next thing we see is Terry coming back in a Porsche. A big old Porsche that zooms up the driveway. And we see her getting out and coming in, and running in, calling for Mickey, asking what they told them. What he told them. And of course, finding out the mother's there. So there's a bit of a family moment there. And the mother wants to know if her daughter's all right. And this is when Mickey, of course, lets his mother know that she wasn't alone that night. We go back to Detective Barnes and Jessica as they're discussing theories about how the murder happened. And we also find out that there was something missing. There's a picture on the wall which has been taken. And the detective says that it was only a picture of Johnny and his kids. Nothing of valuable or anything. Now at this point, Buster comes in, saying that Lou is attacking Mickey, trying to kill him, thinking that Mickey is the one who killed Johnny Shannon. And Lou gets his hands on him and starts throttling the guy. Just trying to just crush the life out of him. Detective Barnes rushes around and knocks Lou into the pool. Thankfully, Mickey isn't too hurt, but they're asking. They ask Lou then why he thinks Mickey's the one who killed him, and he says he was thinking about it, and he realizes that Mickey is the last one who saw Johnny Shannon alive, because he saw Mickey leaving the den. So he was the last person. Now, at this point we have Mickey explaining that he went in to show his father some of the notes that he'd made on this musical piece, some of the changes, and his father didn't want to see any of them until after it was completely done. So he just left. Now, Lou, of course, wasn't around. Because Lou was told to just, get out of there. Which Buster says is what he used to say when he was having a lady friend around. Now, Terry and Peggy end up showing up and informing the detective that Vic LaRosa was in the house. And she didn't want to say anything because she didn't think that Vic killed her father. She didn't want to think that. But he was there. She had shut off the security system. Now, this is the big security system that Jessica and the detective were also talking about. That nobody gets in the front gate unless the security guards have their name on the list. Someone from the house has to call down and deliver a name. There has to be identity verification in order to let them in. The groundskeeper and the gardener, I should say, and the poolman come in through the back way, the servants' entrance. They buzz, a camera gets turned on there, and they get some voice communication going on with the guard in the shack and find out what's going on there. But Terry turned the power to the system off so that Vic LaRosa could get in the back way. Because the night security guard reads a lot, doesn't pay attention to the panels, so he wouldn't see the little light going off. The monitors aren't on unless the alarm's going on. So it's very clever. Detective Barnes calls up the police to get an APB out on Vic LaRosa, and things kind of calm down. Lou, of course, apologizes to Mickey, and they seem to have a bit of a heart-to-heart. Now, the next thing we see is Jessica and Peggy talking, because Jessica's figured something out. The guard at the gate just waved them on through when they arrived earlier. So Jessica believes that Johnny was meeting a lady friend, Peggy. And yes, it's true. We find out Peggy did show up and Johnny was charming, and they made love that night. But he was still alive when she left. She didn't want the children to know. Understandably so. I mean, they are separated, not divorced. It's one of them things. They had a very difficult marriage, from what I understand. And Peggy goes into it a bit here with Jessica. Now, the next scene that happens, we have Detective Barnes talking with Jessica, as Jessica has a bit of a theory she's working on. So we see the detective talking to Jessica about her theory that it may have been a mob hit, because when she was having a discussion with Peggy, Peggy makes mention that Johnny knew Mr. Valentine, a mob boss, because Mr. Valentine fronted the money to get Johnny into show business early on. So there was some issues there. Now, the good detective, he says it's possible. I mean, the way Johnny was shot is definitely a bit of a signature of the mob. Bullet to the back of the head, execution style. Absolutely. But the good detective says that usually if you start pissing off mob bosses, you end up with concrete boots into Lake Michigan. And Jessica's like, that's true. I mean, but the fact that it doesn't exactly mesh with Vic LaRosa being the killer. And of course, the detective is like, what are you talking about? It's perfect. I mean, you want him to wear a t-shirt that says hired killer? You know, being a tennis player is a perfect cover. He gets to come and go, move around a lot. It's a pretty decent cover. And then he says, besides, who else could be a killer in that place? The very next scene, you see Buster on the phone talking to somebody, saying that he has to talk to Mr. Valentine. He has a very urgent message for him. And we see him suddenly freak out because somebody else is on the phone. And that somebody else is Terry. Then we see a taxi pulling up and Jessica Fletcher getting out, paying the cabbie, and talking to the security guard, saying she has a few questions she wants to ask him. The next scene, we see Jessica and Lou in the house, heading somewhere. Lou's escorting her to see Terry, who's in the den. watching one of her father's old videos. Because even though she and her father did not get along well, there was definitely there's still feelings there. She's still, like, he was still her father. And Jessica has a couple questions for her about the picture that went missing off the wall, and we find out that she took it after the murder, but before the police arrived, because she just wanted something to keep close by her so that she could remember how her father used to be, the happier times that they used to have together. So Jessica is talking with Terry. I can remember names. And she finally asked what Jessica wanted to talk about. And she wanted to talk about how her and Vic LaRosa met. And Terry said that she picked up Vic LaRosa. It wasn't the other way around. Apparently Mr. LaRosa was so wrapped up in himself that Terry had to practically throw herself at him. And she did it because he's exactly the sort of person that her father would hate. And that was exactly right. Jessica, of course, says that particular man, because Terry ends up mentioning to him when he was there that night that her father was in the den. And she did it to unnerve Mr. LaRosa, which it did, because he was too much of a wimp to leave the room. So she doesn't think Vic killed her father, even though she doesn't like Vic, and was only using him to get back at her father. Jessica, of course, doesn't believe that he's the sort of man that a powerful mob boss would hire. And she seems quite upset, Terry, that a mob boss may have been involved, and asks Jessica if she's sure, because she then makes mention that she overheard Buster on the phone trying to get a message to Mr. Valentine. The next thing we see is the good detective coming in, making mention that they've spotted Vic LaRosa heading down to the Mexican border, and somebody's going to apprehend him. We cut then to Pecos West Gas Company, this van getting tuned up by a very talkative southern gentleman. And Vic is obviously impatient to get out of there. And of course we hear the sirens coming, and Vic hears them too, and sees the cops coming and decides to make a break for it, and he tries to run. The cops, however, are faster, and they tackle him to the ground and cuff him up, read him his rights. The next thing we see is him getting escorted back into the station to talk to the detective with everyone present, because when he got arrested, he immediately accused Terry Shannon of killing her father. Now, there's a few questions asked to Vic LaRosa, and of course he has believable answers before it. Jessica decides that to basically tell Mr. LaRosa that he should get a lawyer, which he speaks up and asks for one immediately. So they take him out, and Jessica, of course, talks to the detective, saying it's a bit funny that if he was a mob hitman, he would have a more complicated means of getting away than taking an unreliable van south. And Detective Barnes says, it's possible. But he still wants Terry and the rest of them to not leave town. Anyone who's at the house that night to stick around. Jessica has a few things to work on, and she says she'll call the detective when she gets it figured out. The next scene we see Jessica talking with Buster about the phone call that he made to Mr. Valentine. And we find out the only reason he was calling Mr. Valentine, according to him, is so that he thought he might be next on the hit list. And he wanted to let Mr. Valentine know he had nothing to do with anything. He was basically trying to save his own skin. And during the conversation, he ends up saying that he understands what Jessica's getting at. He gets the picture. He's like, I got the picture. And Jessica's like, could you repeat that again? And he's like, I got the picture. And he's like, Jessica is immediately like, I know who killed Johnny Shannon. Just like that. So who did kill Johnny Shannon? Well, she goes to the phone, picks up dials the operator. And calls the police. Because during the discussion that she's having with Buster, and because of a previous discussion she had with Terry, we know that Johnny had a bunch of tapes up on the wall. And one of them tapes, or some of those tapes, were of his pool game. He installed a camera up above the pool table so that he could watch and see his mistakes, because he had to be perfect in everything he did. And Jessica suspects that Johnny invited Mr. Valentine over and got them to play a game of pool where he got the mob boss to incriminate himself and had a tape of it. And that the killer took that tape. Now, once the police have arrived, good old Detective Barnes, Jessica takes him down to the den to show him what all went on. And Jessica suspects that the killer knew that Vic LaRosa was involved with Terry and decided to watch Vic LaRosa and wait until he came over when he could follow him in when the security system was down. Very smart. Came into the den. Triggered the spring lock so the door would be locked when he left. Shot Johnny Shannon with a silenced gun, and then proceeded to look through the tapes on the shelf until he found the incriminating evidence of the pool game with Mr. Valentine, and then proceeded to take it with him. Making mention of the camera above the pool table. Now, the interesting bit comes when Jessica makes mention of the simple fact that all he had to do then, the killer, was leave the room locked and wait until Vic LaRosa left following him out again, so no one would be the wiser. She also makes mention of the picture on the wall, and that she made mention of it as being missing. And the detective knew that it was a picture of Johnny and his kids. But there was no way he could have known that, because that picture was removed before the police got here. So the only way he could have known is if he had been in the room before then. Because he's the killer. Which explains why he took a job, because he's originally from Chicago, why he took a job down in a little desert community as a policeman. Perfect cover. And of course, he pulls a gun right then and there, and takes out his silencer, putting it on. And of course, he is going to shoot her, but that's when Jessica calls out, and Lou and Buster and the rest of the family all come in, and Buster has got a gun. And our hitman, pretending to be a police detective, kind of nods in respect to Mrs. Fletcher and hands over his gun to her. And at this point, Jessica thanks the detective, because that gun is the only real evidence she has that that he killed Johnny Shannon. And that ballistics will definitely find that the bullets from this gun will match the bullet from Johnny Shannon. And end credits right there. Very interesting episode. I kind of liked it. There was a lot of nice little moments in it. But the detective ending up being the killer, I did not see that coming until the end. When she started explaining how everything was done, and she was alone with him in the room, I knew right then it was going to be him. But up until that point, I wasn't sure. Very interesting episode. I quite liked it overall. So that's going to be it for this episode of the Murder, She Wrote Rewatch podcast. The last episode in Season 1 is coming up soon. Funeral at 50 Mile. Jessica has to unravel the secrets and threats at the funeral of a friend in Wyoming. We're going to Wyoming. Very, very interesting. So yes, thank you all so much for watching. If you like what I'm doing, please give that like button a tap. Give that subscribe button a tap as well if you haven't already, so you can be kept apprised of when I do new videos. And throw a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think of this particular episode. And as I said, if any of you have seen that, The White Shadow, let me know about that. I'm kind of curious. But yes, do all that, the liking and the subscribing, and join me next time for Wyoming, for a Wild West funeral at 50 Mile. Join me for that, and for more murder.